Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Brooke Powers, and I'm joined with Mary Beth Samich, and we are bringing you our first webinar, our first live webinar that is on holiday hopes and habits, and we're also going to be talking about healthy boundaries in this.
Yes, as the holidays come, there's lots of boundaries that need to be set. And so we're here in our pajamas with our wine, very comfortable. And we encourage you to do the same because we're going to talk about a lot of uncomfortable topics tonight.
Yes, and so we're live on Facebook, and we're also live on Instagram, and so we're kind of checking back and forth between a couple of screens so you all know what's going on our end. And we're having a little bit of trouble connecting on Instagram, so we're glad that you're here with us on Facebook.
Yes. Definitely. And if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the comments as you watch, and we'll try to answer them as we go. Or if you want to leave a question, if you can't watch live, we can definitely answer you back either on the thread or a private message or whatever.
For sure. And yeah, feel free to text me with private questions. That's totally fine. Or actually even better would be to email me at Brooke, BROOKE, at yourcenterpiece, like the state of mind.org.
Yes, and my email is marybeth@yourjourneythrough.com.
Yeah, so that's some of the logistics of the evening. Hopefully you all are comfortable and you're in a comfortable place, and we'll just dig in and we'll get started with this, what can be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's so much more comfortable than the unmet expectations that happen or the disappointment, I should say, that happens from unmet expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also going to be a worksheet linked to this and on just holiday expectations. It's great for you and your partner or your family to go through and talk about kind of what are the expectations going into the holidays. So Brooke's going to link to that, I think, at the end of this video.
Yeah, love your feedback as you go through that with your partner, because we're always looking at refining things at Centerpiece and making them better for the next go around. So
definitely. So this kind of topic comes at a good time for me because it's my first Christmas away from my family, my parents specifically. So I'll be spending it with my in-laws to be. I'm engaged, so as you know, and I participate with Centerpiece as much as possible. My fiance and I do. We love it. So that's going to be a lot different for me. And so I've been thinking kind of about some of the things on the worksheet and thinking up those questions. And I think this is something that's common to a lot of people these days. I mean, I know my parents, they got married, they lived 15 minutes from each other. So they could do both families on Christmas. Yeah. And that's so rare now. People meet online across states in college, and so you don't always get to spend the holidays with your family. And how is another family different from your own, and what do they do? And even thinking, what can I incorporate, like tradition-wise, from my family into this holiday? So
yes, and so my husband Jeremiah and we've had 15 years of holidays together. We've been married for 15 years, and I remember our first holiday together. So a little bit about my background. I came from a rather small family. We had about 12 adults at Christmas, and my sister and my brother and I, and we're just, in general, I didn't realize it, but we're a quiet family. And so my first Christmas with Jeremiah and his family was 50 people in a 600 square foot room.
Oh my goodness.
And they're not quiet people. They're amazing. They have a lot of love. They love big, and they're loud up in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so both of our families are in Michigan. They're 3 hours apart, and here we are in North Carolina. And so we're traveling there, and he's fine. And we get there, and he takes off, and he's hanging with his cousins, catching up with his aunts and uncles.
Probably.
Yes, and I was freaking out because it was just so overwhelming for me. People kept handing me babies, and I was like, I'd never held a baby before, and I'm like being held these babies because we're married now, and there's this expectation. I don't know, and I was like looking for the exit the whole time because it was just so loud. And now I've come to appreciate it and the energy.
Mm-hmm.
But at first it was so much, and then just feeling like he left me
Mm-hmm.
and to fend for myself. And that was really hard.
Yeah, and how different might it have been if you'd had the conversation before, like, oh, you're going to be handed these babies and it's a really enclosed space and people are loud. And I think a huge part is knowing what you're going into so that you can prepare for it and kind of manage not only your expectations, but your reaction also.
And even now, like, I'm not great with big crowds. So we have like little signals that we can share with each other when Brooke's done. Because I'm still an introvert.
I'm that way too. I'm the introvert in the couple dyad for sure. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'm ready to go when I'm ready.
Yeah. So I've got the little knee squeeze. It's like a double knee squeeze. And he knows. He's like, okay, Brooke is done.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way for us to, nicely exit instead of me just become flooded with too much stimulation and then I run the risk of snapping at somebody, which is never good.
Right. And you've just kind of hit your limit for sure. So I think that's smart, right? It's kind of managing expectations, knowing your limits, naming your limits. We did a Tip Tuesday earlier about naming your limits. What are they? How do you know when you've hit them? And like the signal idea is a really good one.
Thanks. Not a therapist. Coming from a therapist, teacher. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Reinforce good habits, right?
Absolutely. And I really like what you said about naming your limits in the Tip Tuesday because some families really easy to be around and you can spend a lot of time with them, whereas some family dynamics are painful because of things that happened in the past, but they're still important because they're your family. And you want to set yourself up for success. So, with some family members, we have like a day visit. Other family members, it's a 3-day visit. And other family members, it's a 5-day visit. So, Jeremiah and I had to talk about what our parameters were for success for those different family members and how we could, end the visit on a good note instead of going, oh my gosh, I wish I wouldn't have rolled my eyes at my mom. I can't believe I did that, and I don't want to be like that. And so I want to have a good visit.
Setting time limits is definitely important. And even kind of tuning into yourself and realizing and recognizing how you feel at certain points. Like the first day you might be really excited to be there and like so happy to be with your family, and the second day is great, and the third day, and then the fourth day you start snapping a little bit. And that's what you have to tune into, like maybe even triggers before that fourth day. Before you get there.
Yeah. And if you know that about yourself, plan a date for yourself or with you and your spouse. So say, hey, 2 days in, I could say to my mom and be like, I want to take Jeremiah to that really cute coffee shop that I loved growing up. And so, can you watch the kids for a couple of hours while I take him out on a date? And that just gives us a chance to recharge as a couple and again, be set up for success.
And they might even love the grandparent time, right? Like the solo grandparent time.
Yeah. And on that note, because I have been married for 15 years, I will say I did have a conversation with my mom because we're all four families in one house with 3 bedrooms. So that means the kids are in the same room with us at night while they're sleeping. This does not allow for time for intimacy.
Right.
All right. And so if
how long are you there? It could be a week. It could be a week. Yeah.
If you're there for like 5 days, like, with us, we need to schedule something in there just to keep that spark alive.
Yeah, it's important.
And so I was able to share with my mom, she's super cool. And I was like, hey, Mom, like, we're all here. All the kids and, Jeremiah and I are here. So is there any chance like you and Dad could take the kids
have a sleepover some night
or something, like take them out to a matinee so we can just have some couple time? She totally got it. And she was like, yes, I'd love to take them to the Alvin and the Chipmunks or whatever it was that she did. And that was huge for us because, when you're used to being together and then you can't, it can also.
Yeah, and you're in a strange place and you're around family all the time. And especially if you're not like people big into PDA, that
right.
can put a strain, I think, on some relationships.
Definitely.
So that's important to kind of set boundaries around intimacy too, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's tough to set boundaries. I think that's something to touch on, is how uncomfortable it can be, and just kind of accepting that it might not feel good all the time to set boundaries, but it's as long as, you can do it respectfully and clearly and calmly, and use a lot of I statements, and there are some tips and tricks to doing it successfully. So
yeah, and there's also a difference between a boundary and a wall. One of our programming team members brought that up, is like Mary Beth said, setting them gently. And so one of the things that I really like on the worksheet that we're sharing with you all is what day of the year is most important to you and why. And so why do we ask that of our parents? It's to find out what their very most important holiday is, so that you can try to make a point to be there for that holiday. But once you know that, then you have some wiggle room, I think, with the other holidays, and you don't have to feel guilty about being there for every single holidays, because when you're coming together and becoming a new family, like, you're probably going to want to make some traditions with the two of you, and in the United States, we're limited with vacation time.
Yeah.
Like, we might get 2 weeks if we're lucky. So all 2 of those weeks, they don't need to be with family. Like, your relationship needs to be the priority and building that solid foundation.
Definitely. And it's tough kind of as a new couple to go into that too. Just kind of setting that expectation, like, okay, we're kind of the priority for each other now, instead of your nuclear family. I'm actually an only child too, so I have like kind of that guilt on my shoulders of not spending Christmas with my parents, but luckily they have so many siblings and grandparents that will keep them really busy while I'm gone, and I plan to visit the following weekend. But
nice.
Yeah, it's tough to do that.
That would be really hard, and I feel for you being the only child.
Yeah, I mean, if I had siblings there, I'd maybe feel less guilty, but
yeah,
he spent Christmas with my family last year, and so we, we're doing it as fairly as possible, as fairly as we can. So.
Yeah. And then I think that's good preparation too, because when kids come in the mix, you may want to spend Christmas at your house, so they can wake up Christmas morning at their house and see their Christmas tree and do that. And so then that's an opportunity to invite parents in and to spend Christmas with you, which would be a huge change for them, from you always going there to now they're coming to your house. So
it is a big shift, but starting your own traditions is important.
It is. And analyzing the traditions that you were brought up with. I mean, not like spreadsheet analyze, because I could go there because I like being a nerd like that.
But my family thrives on spreadsheets.
But really looking at that and seeing, what did I like growing up? What makes Christmas for me? If I'm a traditionalist and I like that candlelight service, not doing the candlelight service can feel like something's missing from that special day. Sometimes it's food for people. If like one of our family traditions was to make really fun breakfasty foods and set it all out in front of the Christmas tree. And so we'd actually eat breakfast in front of the Christmas tree, all lit up, and it was still dark outside because we woke up early, and it was a really fun tradition. And then I remember going into our first year of marriage at our house, when we actually stayed at our house, and he had no clue what I was doing.
And also, why would he, right?
Right, because he wasn't brought up at my house.
I think we just expect people to go with the flow, like as if they've been there the whole time, and that can make them feel really weird. So, communication is huge, and giving grace to people too.
Oh my goodness. So
when they don't know better, or what your traditions are, or what to do. And
we've learned so much in our 15 years of mistakes and some disappointments after family visits. One of the things I think that really helped us the most was the differentiation between a vacation and a family visit. And I think you said that in your Tip Tuesday as well.
Yeah.
Because when you're setting yourself up for a family visit, there's an expectation of being on their schedule, which also, I just want to say, you don't have to do everything that's on their schedule. Like, you need to make you time and take a break, and it's okay to say no to some of the things on the schedule, because some families really pack it in.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to get away for a breather and get your couple time. But that the differentiation between a family visit and a vacation was huge for us.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency, especially if you're going out of town and across state lines, to think of it as a vacation, right? Because you're leaving home for, several days probably, and it's exciting to leave home and go on trips. But if there's also this expectation of vacation, like it's going to be relaxing and it's going to be nice and we're going to connect and it's going to be calm. Yeah, no, like it's not calm around the holidays. It's almost anything but calm usually. And so instead of, leaving and being like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Why did we do that? I need a break from my break. Like setting expectations going in and boundaries around like, how can I make time to feel good? Maybe you need to get away.
Yeah, that is so important. I remember, this wasn't exactly wedding related. Okay, it was wedding related actually. Going up to Michigan for one of our friends' weddings, and we were in the wedding, and just the expectations were so different. Like he was thinking vacation, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm in the wedding, so I've got to do all like the bridesmaid duties. Yeah, and so we weren't even together, and we're driving back, and we got into one of the hugest fights in our marriage because we dropped like $800 with all the wedding expenses to be in the wedding, and it was really special for me, but he didn't know that friend very well. And
he probably felt alone most of the time because you're away, you're taking pictures, you're doing all that stuff. Yeah. It's tough to be a date at a wedding where your significant other's in the wedding. I've been there, and then also my fiance's been there for me. Yeah. So, yeah, you kind of feel for them.
Yeah, thinking like he's thinking vacation, I'm thinking like bridesmaid duty. And so our expectations were totally different. So that's why we love this worksheet that we created that just spells out the expectations. Like, what is Thanksgiving like at your family? Are you guys eating your turkey dinner in front of the television, or are we eating Thanksgiving dinner on china plates?
Yeah, and that'll help you know how to dress too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the worksheet is just a way to avoid those fights afterwards in the car that are unpleasant because you've already laid it all out. You've already talked about it, and writing's on the wall.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love the emojis y'all are sending our way. They're so much fun. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so please feel free to comment there too. Ask questions as we go, and we're just sharing our experience.
We did get a couple questions before this. Right. And so one of them was, how do you go about setting boundaries kindly, right? That's kind of a key word, but also still with value. So getting your point across still. And I would say it's definitely not easy or comfortable the first few times. I think you're going to feel more uncomfortable more than the other person, especially if you're not used to setting boundaries, you're not a super assertive person. I do a lot of assertiveness training. We just got some kind of comment. So I caught my eye.
Carol.
Hi, Carol. Yeah. So I do a lot of assertiveness training in my practice, especially with women. I mean, I think it's kind of a gendered issue where, a lot of women are afraid that they might come off the wrong way if they're assertive. But being assertive is actually the healthiest form of communication, and there's a way you can do it to where you don't have to worry about, being called a B word. Like using I statements and speaking kindly and leading with validation first, right? Like, Mom and Dad, I so appreciated waking up on Christmas morning in our house, just the three of us. I mean, if we're talking my family. And that's something I really want to pass on to my kids, is waking up Christmas morning with just my husband and I and doing those traditions, kind of like you talked about. So if you first lead with how meaningful they made that for you, it makes it a lot easier to then set the boundary with them. And they know it's coming from a good place and a loving place and, not one of exclusion.
So that's so good. And then maybe even to add on to that, like, hey, we would really love it if you would come down the following weekend so we could do the full family Christmas with you, just a few days after Christmas. I mean, does that sound okay, Mom?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that was too weak. Does that sound okay?
No,
I don't know.
That's good. I think that opening up opportunity to spend with them is also really important. And that was also one of the questions that you kind of touched on earlier, is what's the difference between a boundary and a wall.
Mm.
And a wall has the idea of exclusion, whereas a boundary has the idea of appropriate inclusion. That's kind of a good way of thinking of it. And every family is different, and maybe there are some specific family members that would be healthier with a wall, right? But if you have if you have a healthier family dynamic and your in-laws or your parents are people that really bring something to your life, then I mean, it's a blessing to have them there, right? So offering opportunities for both sides to be included as often as you can while still setting your limits is really important.
That's so good. And it looks like Eric has a question. Yeah. Here's this question this week. When a spouse brings in a tradition and the other spouse figures out after years that it bothers them, how does the one that it bothers transition out of that, especially when it involves their in-laws?
Oh, man. Woo.
Yeah, that's tough because you've been doing it for a few years.
So how do you transition out?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it kind of depends what it is a little bit, right? Like, what's the history behind it? How important is it to them? Why is it happening? Is there like a function of the behavior? But I mean, as an individual, and probably talking about it with your spouse first, right? Hopefully that's like a safe conversation that you can have, and maybe you might need a facilitator. I don't know, it depends, but talking to your spouse first about why you dislike it and kind of the meaning behind that and what it would mean to you to do something different. And then if you have your spouse's support, both of you approaching your in-laws and saying, hey, we have this idea this year to kind of tweak this a little bit and make it something that you're comfortable with too, and that your spouse supports. And maybe there's some kind of middle ground where you can do something similar but not quite that, or your spouse really likes your new idea. But I think the most important thing is to find some kind of middle ground with your spouse and have their support.
And what do you think about the child, so the adult child, whoever the in-law is, that child of that person is the one who delivers the information instead of the in-law child delivering the information.
Right, and that's why it's important to join with your spouse first. And then it typically is maybe more of their place to do that and in support of you, if hopefully you have that relationship and support, that can definitely make it easier. I mean, I think my fiance and I have done that quite a bit, right? Like, hey, can you send this message to your mom? Or hey, can you send this message to your dad? And just so that it feels a little better that way, and it feels more united that way as a team, as a couple.
Yeah, and I think it feels too like I'm just trying to picture myself in my in-laws' shoes. They're amazing. They totally adopted me as a daughter, but just that I'm not trying to exclude them or put up a boundary or wall, and that Jeremiah is the one who's delivering the information.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't advocate not having a good relationship where you can have those conversations, but the ones that are a little more sensitive, like this family tradition that your spouse has been a part of most of their life and you haven't, since it's probably more connected to them, it might be more appropriate that way.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. Any other questions? Just keep them rolling in. I think you had another one that asked you early on.
What if family rejects boundary setting and is hurt by it? Okay. So that's kind of tough, and it might happen. Not everyone takes boundary setting the same way. There's parents that are like, thank you for telling me that. Like, of course, right? That's the reaction you're hoping for. But that's not always the reaction that happens. So that can be awkward sometimes. And again, it's kind of about leading with validation to soften that a little bit. Kind of building it up and saying, I really love this that you do, and we really appreciate this. This year, we can't really do this for this reason. And I hope that you can understand. And next year, we'd like to do this with you instead. So you also have to think about what's best for you and your relationship too. And setting boundaries is healthy. It's self-care. And if you're consistently worried about what everyone else is thinking and what they're feeling, what does that kind of do to you sometimes? So I think having support around setting those boundaries when your family isn't happy, like if you and your spouse are united in the decision, it makes it a lot easier to deal with negative feelings from someone else. But
Absolutely.
have confidence in the boundary that you're setting, right? Know that it's what you need and what's right.
Yeah.
And that if they have trouble accepting that, that's kind of maybe something they need to work on a little bit in the future.
Yeah,
So,
some people need to hear no
yeah.
once in a while, or not this time. And I will say, like, setting a boundary, especially around holidays, it's the hardest the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like parents, they start to understand that, okay, well, you are part of a new family now, and it's a bigger family. And so there has to be some give and take and sharing. But I think that first time is, I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to be like. It's going to be hard to not spend, Christmas or Thanksgiving with my kids for the first time.
Yeah. Someone shared a story with me lately. She had told her sons that, when you get married, your wife becomes your priority, right? It's not your parents anymore. And then when they came to her and told her that, she was like, oh, it still hurt, right?
Yeah,
because those are your babies. And I mean, even so, that kind of shows that even when you set an expectation, it's still sometimes hard to hear. But I mean, she set the expectation, so she's clearly understanding of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. More questions?
Yes, let's see here. Well, we just definitely encourage you all to check out the worksheet, which we'll attach here when this posts to the Centerpiece webpage, and let us know what you think about it. And just a little plug for Centerpiece. So we are a 501c3. We are totally run and dependent on your donations. And if you all would love to make a donation, we would love to receive it. And we will receipt you right away. So you can make the donation right through Facebook, and Facebook will receipt you, or you can make it on our website, yourcenterpiece.org, and you'll get a receipt right away.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. We hope you gleaned something from my mistakes and Mary Beth's wisdom.
Oh, stop.
And we'll look forward to you tuning in next time.
Yeah, have a wonderful holiday season, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.